My name is Nida Rizki and I have been a hairdresser for the better part of 20 years. The worst part, I was bleaching off my fingertips and having all sorts of accidents. In 2017, I decided that I was tired of being your regular mainstream hairdresser. And so no offense to any of my wonderful aunties who come to me. I love all of you and you keep me thriving. But I had a moment, an existential crisis like the rest of them. And I moved to Canada and I decided that I would apply to become a hairdressing instructor at a correctional facility for women. And while I was there, and since I have been out of there, I realized that I start a lot of my stories saying when I was in jail. And once in a while, I'll hear an auntie who's sitting in my chair turn and tell her daughter, देखा मैंने बताया था ना ये तो जेल काट के आई है ये कोई immigration के लिए थोड़ी गई थी वहाँ पे. So I need to really clarify that I was teaching there and I was not incarcerated. I wrote a story called A Tangled Summer, which everyone put up, and it was a moment in my life that really changed me. It broke my heart. It was very sad. It had to do with the lady that I worked with who was in solitary confinement. And like I told Humaira, it's been such a sad day. It's been a sad week. It's been a sad month. So I decided I'm not going to tell you the sad story. I'm going to tell you the best story. I'm going to tell you the best time that I had at the prison. And this is a story about a woman called Trisha. Trisha was larger than life. She applied to become a hairdresser in my hairdressing unit. The way that my program worked was I had a hairdressing salon, which was in the basement of the living quarters of women who had been incarcerated and were ready to be released. So they would have been out of prison in a matter of 6 months to 2 years. So once you were in that program, I was helping rehabilitate so that when they went out of prison, there was less chance of them reoffending, and I had given them something and a purpose to do. So Trisha applied to be part of my program, and she was set to be released on the 2nd of January. And I interviewed her, and she seemed quite interesting. So when she came down to my unit, one of the perks that we had was that I was allowed to serve them hot coffee, so that we created that wonderful environment. So she came down. My hairdressing workers would come down at 9 o'clock every morning. So Trisha walked downstairs, and I said, Trisha, how would you like your coffee? And Trisha looked at me, and she said, Miss Nida, I like my coffee like I like my men, strong and black. So I asked Trisha to have a seat, and I handed her her strong black coffee. And she looked down at my phone, and if you know me, you know that my phones are terrible, and I drop them a lot, so my phone screen was cracked. And she looked at it, and she said, Miss Nida, you need to make more money. You're not making enough money here. And I said, well, what do you expect me to do? And she said, do what I did, rob a bank. So I said, well, Trisha, how do you expect me to rob a bank? I don't know what I'm supposed to do. And she said, do what I did, Google it. So it has since been removed, but I did. In 2017, if you Googled how to rob a bank, you would get a drop-down list of exactly what you needed to do. So it had 4 steps. Step 1, Trisha, what did you do? She said, well, first, you need to know what bank to rob, and there are 100 banks in downtown Toronto, so I decided I was going to rob this one. Step 2, you need a disguise. So Trisha, what was your disguise? I went down to the dollar store and I got myself a red wig. I was like, way to be inconspicuous, Trisha. Well done. No wonder you got caught. Number 3, Miss Nida, you need to write a note because they have all sorts of technology these days and they can tell your handwriting. They can tell who you are just from reading your handwriting. So I wrote my note with my left hand. I was like, brilliant, Trisha. And number 4, you need a getaway car. So Trisha, who was your getaway car? She's like, well, Miss Nida, this is really interesting because I have a neighbor called Abdul and he's Pakistani like you. I was like, oh, that's interesting, Trisha. So I was like, how did you convince Abdul to help you rob this bank? So she said, you Pakistanis are very easy. She said, I went to Abdul and I said, Abdul, you're going to drive me to the bank. You're going to wait in the car. And he said, but what do I get? And Trisha said, if you do this, Abdul, I will kiss you. And Abdul was a regular Turkey Pakistani man. And Abdul said, let's go. So Trisha takes her red wig and she sits in the car and she and Abdul drive to Oh, sorry, I signed an NDA. She went to a bank in downtown Toronto. She slipped the teller her note, which was written with her left hand, that said, "Give me all your money." He gave her $500, and she starts running. She takes off her wig. She flings it onto the sidewalk, and she jumps into the car with Abdul. And she says, "Abdul, drive!" And Abdul says, "Where's my kiss?" So she kisses Abdul, and Turkey Abdul starts driving down the wrong side of the road because he is Pakistani. So that was Trisha's getaway, not so good getaway story, and she was arrested. That was her 7th robbery. She never asked Abdul to help her earlier, so obviously Abdul was really, really important in this story. She told me the story, I loved it, and she said, "Now you're gonna always remember this story, and I will never forget it." And on the 2nd of January, when she was released, before our inmates were released, they were given the opportunity to come and say goodbye to us. So she came down, doors would open at 9 a.m., she came down at 8:59. And she came down to me and she said, "Miss Nida, I just want to say, Miss Nida, I just want to say one thing to you." And I said, "What?" So she said, "When in doubt, Google it." And that's the end of my story.